Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 487. I had the black pieces. My opponent played d4. Go d5. And now he goes e3. See, e3 is a bit of a rare move. This can introduce a number of different systems. Typically, it's associated with the call system. So the call system, white sets up a real solid pawn structure with just the move c3. And then develops his pieces behind the pawns, plays for a later push e4, and generally opens things up after he's got his pieces in position for a kingside attack. So usually these quiet openings do have some long-term attacking potential you have to be aware of. The other idea is to play the called Zuckertort with pawn to b3 and bishop to b2. But my opponent has a different idea here. So anyway, I just play knight f6, kind of a flexible waiting move. See what his setup is. He goes with bishop to d3. I go ahead and play e6 here. Let's see, knight c6 is the top choice, or c5, immediately going after the center. E6 isn't too bad. And then he can develop a knight f3, and we'd get kind of a normal position. You can see c3 is a move there already. Knight d2 is a move. But he plays f4, and this characterizes the Stonewall attack. So he's got his pawns there, and this f-pawn is set up for an aggressive push to f5, supported by the bishop, and usually a quick castling on the king side to put the rook on the f-file as well. So it's an aggressive opening. And you'll see it's not especially good. The engine actually likes black better, but you do have to fend off the attack. So you have to play a bit cautiously. What is the engine recommending? It says a lot of moves here keep the edge. Bishop e7, bishop d6. So normal developing moves. Also c5, starting to go after the center. We're out of the opening book here. I developed with knight b d7, and he goes knight d2. And then I go c5. So my idea is to go after the center and try and disrupt or destabilize his pawn center here. If you just let this persist, this can be a real problem for black to try and get any counterplay against. So immediate undermining is in order, I think. He goes c3. And I leave the tension there for a while. I play b6. The idea with b6 is I'm going to put the bishop on b7, supporting a knight to e5. And this is not a bad strategy in general. I think in this game I played it a little too quickly. So he goes knight to f3. I go bishop b7, following up on this plan. Castles. And right here I play knight to e4. Yeah, so I'm just a little too quick with this. I should continue my normal development, say bishop e7 and castles before putting my knight onto e4. Sometimes you have to worry if your knight doesn't make it to e4, white can line up his forces and prevent that from happening. But here I have, with the bishop here, the pawn here, I've got effectively two defenders of the e4 square, and he's only got two attackers on it. So I can pretty much put my knight there any time, unless his knight has gone to g5, and then if his knight goes to g5, I can chase it back first before putting my knight on e4. So anyway, there's no rush in this case to put the knight on e4, and it's a bit of a mistake. You see the evaluation shifts here, and I've given up that little bit of opening edge that I had. He goes knight f5. This is well prepared. He's already castled, and he's got this solid structure here supporting the knight. So white is in good shape, and so I should still just continue with normal developing moves. Let's see, knight d6. How about bishop e7? Is there an immediate tactical problem with bishop e7? Just out of curiosity. Knight takes e4 is already a problem, huh? Knight takes e4. How about pawn takes e4? Bishop to b5. Yeah, okay, there's already a problem here with this knight, so I have to be cautious because I've overextended with knight e5. That's really the source of my problems here. So what's a move that the chess engine would suggest here? Knight to d6. Just retreating this knight, bringing it back. Okay, so trying to undo my mistake. Okay, but I didn't undo my mistake. Instead, I made my mistake worse by playing f5 and queen h5 check. So anyway, as I was saying, the idea of the knight here on e4 is not a bad idea, but it has to be properly prepared, and I was just a little too quick to do that. I didn't have my bishop out, and I hadn't castled, and so now I'm subject to this quick attack with the queen. And I'm going to lose material here no matter what. The best defense is just to go ahead and bite the bullet here and play g6. I didn't play this way. I played something worse, but he's going to take on g6. I can't take back. Well, I could, but it would give up the rook in the corner. So what's interesting here, I didn't catch this defensive idea, or maybe I would have played this way. There are sometimes when white has set up this kind of attack on your king, sometimes you can put a piece here like a bishop or a queen that introduces a counterpin back the other direction, and that can be a good answer. And so I was kind of looking around for a solution like that. That didn't work, but I could put a knight on f6 kicking the queen. That also works. So it's saying knight e to f6, getting the knight out of that advanced post and hitting the queen. Now the queen has to drop back and stay on the h file here. Queen h3 it says is best to maintain the pin. And then white is up a pawn, and my position is maybe a little uncomfortable, but I could play on. So when I did instead, my only other choice is to move the king. I didn't calculate that one out correctly. I thought I was in bigger trouble there. So I played king e7, but this is worse. He should follow up with queen f7 check, chasing my king around, and this is a horrible position. Now knight takes e4, and say after f takes, bishop to b5 again. Yeah, he's just getting all his pieces in on the attack, and my king is up here on d6 wondering what it's doing up there and how it's ever going to get to safety. Anyway, yeah, that's a really great attack for white. So fortunately for me, he didn't, after I played king e7, he didn't play the best way. He was still thinking of this knight g6 idea, and he played it here anyway. So now at this point, I have no, I didn't want to keep running with the king. It looks like, yeah, king moves are even worse. Well, if I move the king, he's going to take the rook anyway, so he's going to get a whole rook. This way, if I take the knight first, at least I'm just down the exchange and not down a whole piece. Now the next part, I didn't play too badly, but I give up another pawn here. I should really try and hold on to these pawns and just be down the exchange and play on. So this is a kind of an awkward but playable position still. And what the engine is recommending, knight takes d2, getting this knight away from its post again. King back to f7 to hold on to these pawns. Okay, so I had a different idea. I was trying to run the other way with my king, just trying to get the king to safety. But the problem with this is it gives up more material. So I played knight d to f6. It supports this knight on e4, so if he takes here, I can take back with the knight. And he comes in with knight to f3. He's got now some good routes into my position here where he can attack this the g3 square, and I can't really defend it. For example, from the knight on e5 is going to, if I had my king on f7, the knight on e5 would be checking the king away from the defense of the g pawn anyway. So I kept running with the king, and now he comes in here and grabs another pawn, and so now you can see the evaluation has gone up to +2 from +1. So this is winning for white here. But, well, somehow he kind of loses steam at this point. I play queen e8, just trying to chase the knight away. He drops back to e5. I was thinking, yes, it is correct. I was thinking his best move is just to cash out. He's got a pawn and the exchange, and that's enough to win any endgame. So basically, I would have just taken here with the queen. And let's see, queen takes g6. Okay, there are some tricks here. I don't have to trade queens. Queen e7 check. So that's a bit awkward. How about the other way? If he takes with the knight, I take back. This way he can force a trade of queens. Okay, so I thought there was some way he could force a trade of queens, but I had the move order wrong. He needs to take with the knight first, so as to force the trade of queens. And now he's got an endgame where he's got 2 rooks and 2 bishops, and I have 1 rook, 1 bishop, and 2 knights. So So I'm down the exchange, or to put it another way, white is up the exchange, and white has the bishop pair, and white has an extra pawn. You should really be able to win that endgame pretty easily. So that's, I think, the best way to play it. Instead, he started retreating. He went back with his knight, and I try to get my other pieces into the game. You know, I am down the exchange, but I still have the same number of pieces. That's the thing about being down the exchange, is you haven't lost a whole piece, so you have the same number of pieces. They're just more, they're not as nimble, right? The rooks are better pieces, but if you can get your pieces active and into the game quicker than your opponent, you have a good chance of playing on for quite a while, and maybe even turning the tables just being down the exchange. So anyway, I'm trying to activate my pieces, and in the meantime he's sort of reorganizing his forces, so this is all helping me. So let's play on a few moves. His knight drops back to f3. Also kind of a strange decision, but maybe he wants to reroute to that square and go after my d pawn. I'm not sure. Let's see. Knight to g4. I try to get my pieces active, as I was saying. Queen back to h7, and queen to f7 defending. You know, I'd like to get my rook over here and chase his queen away in a good day, and his queen back. Yeah, so you can see he's really wasting a lot of time. Oh, you have to ignore this 000 from the chess engine. It just saw a repetition and scored it a draw, but it's not really a draw. I play rook g8. You can see white still has the advantage here. He's lost a little time, but he still has that material edge. Okay, but he's let me play on, and that's the critical thing here. He decides at this point to take off the knight, which is actually one of the engine choices there. The knights are becoming a menace here near his king. So I take back with the d-pawn, kicking his knight away. His knight goes back into d5, and I take this piece off too. I didn't see any better alternative. I don't really want to trade pieces so much, but but in this case I didn't want to let my queen continue to get kicked around either. Okay, so he takes back. Oh, cancel that. He took back with the f-pawn, which is actually the correct choice. Okay, and right here, my next move is a mistake. So this is one of those examples of why you need to do a little tactical scan before you make your move. So there's actually a tactic on the board right now that white has. If it were white's turn to move, what would white play? Okay, pause the video. You should be able to figure this one out. Pause the video if you haven't yet. I'm going to give the answer away now. White has the tactic queen takes knight. The knight on g4 there is only apparently protected. There's a pin on this pawn. If I take the queen, he takes my queen. Not only does he take it, he takes it with check. So that just loses a piece. So my knight is just hanging there. And it's easy to miss. Oh, that's why taking back with the f-pawn was the right way to take here. It's because it creates this tactic. And it's an example of how you need to, you know, if you're keeping, as you play Blitz, you're keeping sort of a running score in your head of what are all the tactics on the board. And it's easy to miss something like that because it happened as a side effect of an exchange. But you have to recognize that something tactically has changed in the position and sort of update your idea of what's going on tactically in the game whenever that happens. So move by move, you really need to do one of these little quick tactical scans. Although I think you know, it happens pretty much naturally if you just notice all the changes from the previous move. But you have to notice all the changes, the fact that a file has been opened up by that exchange. Anyway, so I ignored that. I played g5, and now my opponent ignored it too. He can just take the knight still. That knight is really just hanging there. Instead he played queen to g3, and so we're back in the situation we were in before, where white has probably still a winning edge, but once again he's missed his chance to really put me away. Let's see, I played queen h5. Yeah, and he goes h3, kicking the knight, and I drop back to the engine wants me to play knight h6. Okay, that's what I did. Knight to h6. He goes bishop to d2. Somewhere along here, you can see I've nearly equalized here, but I don't. It doesn't stay this good. Somehow I give the advantage back. Oh, maybe knight f7. So it wants me to push on immediately with f4. You know, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's threatening to open up a line against the queen. The knight is defending the rook now, so I don't have to be afraid of opening up the g file. In fact, it works to my advantage, and it also brings this bishop to life if I can push these pawns forward. So that's the best way for me to continue, and actually I'm equalizing here. So, well, I missed my shot. I play knight f7, and we're back to that situation where white has this enduring material edge. Okay, rook f2, rook h8, I line up on the h file. So just some maneuvering here, rook to f1, lining up on the f file, and pushing on with g4. Did he miss a trick here? Bishop to e1 is better. It's funny, I guess this is kind of a sharper position than it appears on the surface, because these evaluations have been swinging pretty sharply. So bishop to e1 or d takes c5. It wants to resolve the tension in the center. Interesting. Or pushing on with c4. So it doesn't like this. It's a very natural move. I wouldn't have any criticism of that move myself if I had just looked at it in isolation, just getting the rooks lined up on the f-file and trying to create some pressure here. I guess the problem is this pawn. My f-pawn is pretty securely defended, so maybe the rooks are not as active there as they appear to be, unless white has some kind of plan for undermining f for f5 there. It does stop me from pushing my pawn to f4, so it does have some point. Anyway, so I went on with g4. I've lined up on the h file, so naturally I want to try and open that up. He goes rook to f4, and yeah, it's funny. I take, and suddenly, even though he still has that material edge, I've managed to equalize here. And I guess one of the things which we'll see later in the game is this rook here is close to being trapped. So queen takes h3. I traded. Okay, that's one of the moves here. Takes, and then I took with the rook. Apparently it's better to play knight g5 immediately. Yeah, I didn't. Well, I thought yeah, he can't chase the knight away from g5. So this knight g5 move is really kind of a funny idea, and I play it in the game in a couple of moves. He plays king g2 to attack my rook, and now I get a knight g5. And notice this rook has no way out. It can't go in this direction. And okay, no, we haven't trapped it yet. It does have an out. The rook can still drop back to f2. But it's getting closer to being trapped. That becomes a theme in the next part of the game. He plays rook over to h1 to try and trade off rooks, and now I can just take it and play knight f3, and now the rook really is trapped. This is the point we're getting to. The knight is guarding this square where the rook could run to. The pawn is guarding that square, and so the rook has no moves other than to give itself up for the knight, giving me back the exchange. And at some point, you can see actually that's already one of the top two engine choices, to go ahead and give up the exchange immediately, because this rook is not getting back into the game ever. This knight is on a light-colored square, so it can never be chased away by that bishop, which is on a dark-colored square. And his king, of course, can't chase the knight away. So my one knight is keeping his rook tied up, and I'm free to operate with my remaining pieces. Now, this probably should not be enough for a win, but, well, it gives me some chances. There's still some activity over on the other side of the board, and I can play on. So let's see, he played bishop to c1, dropping back away from the knight, and decide to take here, and he takes back with the e-pawn, which gives me a passed pawn. This gives me a little bit of hope here that there's another idea on the position. Let's see, is it any better if he takes with the c-pawn? Yeah, maybe a little better if he takes with the c-pawn, keeping my pawns bottled up. It's just, well, it's still probably about an even position. The engine is giving a slight edge to white there, but I'm not sure I believe that. I think it's probably pretty even. And then here, the engine also evaluates this as even, or about even, which is probably correct, but like I said, I can still play on. I went king d7. He goes bishop e3, blockading my pawn. I go b5. I want to stop his pawns and then maybe create some weaknesses over here on the queen side, particularly while his pieces are tied up over here on the other side of the board. He brings his king closer. That's good. I play a6. I think I'm still searching for a plan here. He goes king f2, and I went bishop d5, taking a look at this pawn. He played a3, and king c6. Yeah, now I think I'm starting to get the idea of bringing the king over here and trying to invade on the queen side. I probably could have been quicker about that. King b6, king d1, king a5, just marching over here, king c2. This is a good move. It keeps me out of these squares. But notice that White's no longer playing for a win. He's just trying to hold this endgame at this point. I get him all the way up to a4 here, and he plays bishop c1. I guess that's okay. There's some point here where he makes a move. Yeah, king b1. This is a bad move because it really lets me invade with the king. Up to this point, I think White has good chances of holding the draw. But this backwards move with the king, I think, puts him in a bit of trouble. Can I play? I could play king b3 immediately, and maybe that's better. I pushed b4. A takes, and then c takes, so that's all correct. And king takes. And now he's got this isolated pawn that maybe I can round up, and I have a passed pawn over here. He plays bishop e3, blockading my pawn. And I come over here with the king. I've got two targets. I can sort of shift my attention from one to the other. And also the knight. The knight is hitting that pawn as well as the king. And so at this point, yeah, the engine is once again suggesting rook takes f3 as the way to hold this. He tried bishop to f2, just trying to hold on to the pawn. And now this loses to king d3. Let's take a look at that. That's quite a strong evaluation there. King d3. I didn't play this. I guess the bishop, it's a neat trick. Yeah, I often miss these ideas. The bishop wants to stay on this diagonal to help defend this pawn, or at least trade off the knight and liberate the rook if I take that pawn. So wants to stay on this diagonal, but the knight's covering that square, the king is covering this square. So the bishop has no moves to stay on the diagonal. The engine is saying bishop g3. The rook has no moves, the pawn has no moves. He does have moves with this king and pawn, but if he tries to sit still with the king, say king here, then I can start moving the pawn forward, and my pawn is quicker than his. So king d3 is a very nice move. It threatens to advance this pawn and also runs the bishop out of moves. Interesting. Okay. Well, I just saw that I was winning a pawn here, and I thought this was pretty good for me, even letting his rook out. The problem is that I'm winning this pawn as well, and this mass of pawns is enough to actually overwhelm the rook. So first the rook was dominated by the knight, and then later was dominated by the pawns. Now the chess engine is saying that he should just move the rook immediately, not even bother trading off the knight, but getting the rook out of trouble and keeping the material on. Still with the winning edge to black, but that's his best defense. So the trade really helped me, and now this is a winning endgame. He gets his rook active, but I get the extra pawn. And it's pretty simple just to march these pawns forward. Even with this king getting a little bit closer, I can sacrifice the bishop at any time for this pawn, and his king is coming over to the light squares, and the bishop controls. I have a light squared bishop. It's going to control the f1 square, and that's the key point. He gets one pawn, but I get a queen. He could have resigned at any time along here, but he plays an interesting move, rook f2. And now there's a neat checkmate, which I managed to play, which is queen d3. I'll go ahead and put it on. That's how the game ended. You know, whenever you put your queen next to an enemy's king and it's protected, there's only two escape squares, and one of them is blocked by his knight and by his rook when he played rook f2, and the other is controlled by my king. So that's the mating pattern you should always have in mind. Okay, that's how the game ended. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.